Hey everybody, my name is Tom Ellingson for AETutsPlus.com, and today we're going to be like Time Lords and regenerate. Now it looks a little bit something like this. As you can see, a pretty straightforward shot. Time Lord regenerating to another Time Lord. You know. However, we're not Time Lords, and the way we go about doing this effect is using After Effects, and particular and optical flares. So I highly recommend you to get all those products first. Let's go ahead and start a new project. I'm not going to save this one. And we're going to import some particular files here. The footage 1, footage 2, and the mat. We'll get to the torches later on. So, let's drag our footage 1 into a new composition here, and drag the footage 2 beneath it. Now, check out your composition settings. First of all, we're going to be playing with the width and height of it, because we're going to be cropping it and scaling it down for the final output. It's going to be 1280 by 720 pixels, and I'll get to why later, but we'll trim it down by, I don't know, about 120 pixels, right? So 1800 by 1013. Hit OK. Now, again, composition settings, and let's set the duration to about, I don't know, say around 7 seconds. Now go drag the second footage so that they match up evenly. Let's check this out. Okay, we should have about, right now there's 1 frame. Let's make sure it's about 4 frames. So page up a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. This is where we're going to start. So hit the asterisk key to the marker. Doesn't matter where it is, as long as you see it. And right, first of all, before we start rotoscoping, let's include a matte. Now the matte here is done because idiots as we are, forgot to shoot a background plate. So our matte is a reconstructed shot of it, of the same scene. And seeing as we are idiots, we're just gonna have to use this matte. And I've provided the matte with the tutorial so you won't have to go through the same painstaking process as we did, because we're idiots. Now, trim the opacity of the matte down to about 50%, and this is why we played with the output. We're going to drag it around until it matches up with the footage. Now the easiest parts are parts like, say, window and this weird fire hose thing right here. So just, alright, that looks about right. Just hitting the arrow keys until it matches up. So shut it off, shut it on, shut it off, shut it on. Okay, that looks fairly decent. Now the camera will be moving by the end of this tutorial anyway, so it's not critical that it lines up perfectly. Right, maybe we could go up. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now it's a bit distorted because, lenses and everything, and it's different on the planets here because it's a still image and not actual footage, right? So let's just drag this to the bottom here. And we're going to duplicate the first footage here. And we're going to go back to the start of the composition. Drag this so that only the last 4 frames are the second part of the footage, and drag the bottom one to only be the last 4 frames. Do not move it like I did right there, because that's stupid. Right, now let's rename this right here to Roto Puppet. You'll see why in a few seconds. And alright, let's double click our Roto Puppet here, and right now just press the Roto Brush tool. I'm going to be using the Roto Brush tool because it's faster and simpler than actually rotoscoping the damn shot. And you don't have to in this case because the effect is only 4 frames long, so it's not going to matter anyway. So just click and drag on your actor. It doesn't have to be perfect. The Roto Brush will figure it out for you. Just draw some pretty basic shapes here. Alright, just include parts that weren't included. It doesn't have to be perfect, so you don't need every strand of hair right here. It's not that important. But hold down the Alt key to remove some of the parts here that we're not going to have in, like this wall right here. Doesn't need to be blended with anything. And this part right here. And the hands are not that important. But, of course, you want to keep them a bit in there. So just click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. Of course, it will start thinking that your wall is what you want to have with it. So let's just go in here and click and drag until you have something that's fairly decent. It doesn't need to be perfect. I cannot weigh that enough. Of course, on a bigger project with something else entirely, I suppose that would be a good idea. But right now, screw it. You don't need every finger, but let's just do it anyway because that's how cool we are, right? Okay, that looks fair enough. Let's just re-add that little thumb right there. Okay, that looks decent. It's keeping in some parts here that we don't want. All right, so page down to move one frame forward. Look at our mat because this kind of matters. Okay, it looks fair enough. A couple of more frames. Okay, you can see right here there's an issue. Let's remove this and remove that. Okay, and perhaps a wee bit of this. Go one frame forward. Okay, let's remove this again and remove this again, and that again. All right, and let's re-add this finger. Depending on your composition, you might get slightly different results, but again, not important. I'm probably going to say that a lot during this tutorial, so just bear with me. And the last frame here. All right, it's starting to get the idea. All right, that looks fair enough. Now, go ahead and freeze it. When you're freezing it, you're caching the motion, and it's only 4 frames, sorry, not seconds, but what it's doing, it's locking the roto so that you don't have to RAM cache it every time you scrub through it. That takes a lot of CPU, and unless you have a hardcore CPU, it's going to take a while to render, and you don't want it to happen every time you are going to do the render. So, okay. Now, go back to our composition here because you're currently on the layer and you won't be able to do much. Alright, let's see. This, of course, set to only 50%. It's going to look stupid, but okay. Now, there's some obvious, very, very obvious faults here. Like the brightness of the wall, because the mat is comprised of parts that don't have the shadows of the actors, etc., etc. But it's an easy fix, but in this case, only 4 frames. So, again, this part right here will look slightly out of place, but again, 4 frames and it'll be gushing with light, so your attention is somewhere else anyway. But, okay, right now, okay, what do we do? What do we do? These actors are not exactly lined up. Again, we forgot to shoot the most important piece of a Doctor Who regeneration effect, which is the close face-up, or the face close-up, as some would call it. Again, I'm from Norway, so, we call it the close face-up here, but, that's just us. Alright, so, again, double-click this footage, right, and let's see. Go ahead right here to something called the puppet pin, right, and, okay, our footage is selected, so just click, and click, and click, and click, and click, and click, right, about 3 points per arm. You could go up to about 20 if you wanted to, but come on. In this case, you will not need to. So long as there's enough information for the mat to move, you don't need more than a few. Less is more, as someone so elegantly put it once, and in this case, it's very true. Now, let's see. We're going to paint on transparent here. And we're going to move... let's see. I'm going to move the actor, and press T to bring down the opacity and bring it down to about 50% so that you can line it up easier. Okay, so just move the points around until they match up. It's going to take a little while, but it's it's faster than all the other methods I suppose you could do, which would be a disaster. Okay. Let's see. Do not make a new one here and drag this up. It will look weird. It will look really weird, but you're not going to be looking at it anyway. So, right, and final touches, just so that it line up. Okay. Right. So let's go in because I did a mistake here, and I'm very sorry. But sorry, the effects and the puppet tool, and just press U to bring up the keyframes. So select all the first keyframes by holding down Shift. So we'll be selecting all the points here and kind of dragging them to the first frame. Again, I'm terribly sorry. These things happen. Just drag them way out here so that the mesh will be moving instead. Alright? And that's it. Right. Deselect all of them. Now let's go and look at this. Of course, bring the opacity back to 100%. And, alright. Let's see. At this point, that didn't really blend well, but okay. Okay, so now we're going to keyframe the opacity here. So at this point, it should be 50%. Now hit the keyframe, and at this point, 100%. So just that the last frame here is transparent. Not completely, but transparent enough so that you don't really notice it. Of course, let's RAM preview this. Just hit the numpad 0 button and look at it. Alright. Okay. That looks good enough. Okay, we should trim our comp here. Of course, we didn't do it earlier because we didn't know how long it was going to work. So just, composition trim to comp work area. Okay. So the blend is pretty much set up. We'll go back and look at the matte painting later on, but the blend is now set up. And it looks fairly okay. There's some slight differences, but it's, a couple of frames and your attention is elsewhere. So go ahead and just drag all of these and press layer and pre-compose. So just rename it to blend footage. Move all the move it all, and you don't have to open it, but move all attributes. So blend footage, all done, taken care of. And now we're going to be using a plugin called Optical Flares by Video Copilot. So first of all, in case you don't want to be doing this, just hit V to not have the bubble tool selected, because that could get ugly. Okay, so new layer, new solid, and just call it flare right. Now duplicate it a couple of times because we're going to have flares everywhere. So flare left and flare head. Go ahead and set the blend mode on this to add so that they don't pop up. Now, Video Copilot and optical flares. Alright, so first things first. The position needs to be keyframed, as does the brightness. So the brightness, just leave it as it is right now. But, okay. Right around here is where you want to move it. Alright, move it to the arm, in this case the right arm, left part of the footage, but right arm, and keyframe the position. So, page down a few times, just standard thing is to move it in frames of 3, because it tends to work. Now, press U to bring down out your keyframes. 1, 2, 3. And just keep it on the center-ish of the arm. Well, I mean the hand. And it doesn't have to be perfect. as long as it's done and it's following the hand to a certain extent. Of course, some frames are necessary to move a bit more, but all in all, just keep doing this, and we will be building a custom flare pretty soon. This takes a while. But it's worth it. Right, and right about here is where it's disappearing anyway, so, okay. Looks decent enough, if you ask me, right? Fair enough. So, okay. Going to the options of optical flares. Now this will be a bit tricky to work with, but I'll do my best. Let's move this around here. Okay. Clear all. Just clear everything. And sorry. Now we're gonna build a flare from scratch. So go to lens objects. Of course, I have the flare here, but we're gonna be building it from scratch. So start off, we'll make a streak, a glow, an iris, a ring. There's a glint in here too. If I can find the glint, that'll be awesome. There, glint, sparkle, and another streak. Right, looking at it now. Okay, that doesn't look at all perfect. Okay. Anyway, global color. We set it someplace orange. Someplace orange, right around here-ish. But I also have the hex values. Just go EB69 and 22. It's a bit dark, but it'll be okay. Set it to screen mode and go to ring here, and the color source, set it to global so that it'll match our footage. Now, the streak, pretty straightforward. Just scale it, brightness down by half, and the scale down to about 60%. The glow, make them slightly louder, so 137 by 83 in scale. Go into the settings here and set the gamma down to 0.3. Just drag it down here. The iris, let's set it to 149 brightness and 858. Set it to a circle, and the smoothness up to 100. That way it'll just be brighter than it was. So the ring, scale it down because it's just supposed to be in there, so that you can see it slightly. Of course, tiny footage, you can't really see it, but okay. The glint, again, this needs to go down to 30%. Sorry about that. And the sparkle, down, scale it way down, and scale it to about 74%. The streak here, 100 brightness, and about 28 to 30. Alright, and there we have it, the flare. Go ahead and save your preset. If you can't save presets, that means you just rename it to flare. If you can't save presets, that means you haven't opened up After Effects as an administrator. So you'll have to do that. Hit OK, and there we go. There's our flare. Looks good enough, and we can see, set the brightness to about 50%, and we need to flicker it. So go to flicker and set it to sharp or smooth. I think we're gonna go with smooth in this case. Sharp for the head. Set the speed to 75 and the amount to about 40. This will provide flashy thingy. And okay, keyframe the brightness from 0 to 50. in about 1 frame. And again at the end here, so 50. Sorry, let's move this to the end here so that it disappears, like so. Alright, that looks pretty gnarly. Okay, it looks pretty boring, but in the end, it will look good. So, click optical flares there and Control C to copy it. Now, paste it to your left flare. Hit U to bring up the keyframes, and remove the position keyframes, and move it to the left hand, and again keyframe the precision. So again, and numbers of 3, just move around, following the hand. And while you're doing it, you can think of something nice like supermodels, or fun episode of Doctor Who, or Yoda in the Phantom Menace Blu-ray edition, CG and all. Wouldn't call it that bad. And okay, right around here is where it should be deleted. So okay, yep, that's pretty good. So to add some variety to the flicker here, just set the seed on this one to, I don't know, 11,000. Doesn't really matter, but now they're flickering with different timings and won't look stupid. Of course, if you want to match them up, that's great. In this case, they're not matching up, which isn't great, but you just drag the keyframes here. Okay, don't have to be completely synchronized. Okay, so the head is slightly different, but it's the same thing. So just again, Control C and Control V to bring it in right around here. Okay, hit U, and for some reason the keyframes are following me around, but we'll just move them around to where it needs to be, which is right around here. And okay, they're acting up on me. So, lesson learned, I suppose. Going back, moving it. I'm sorry for these mess ups. If you want to not do the same as me, just don't copy paste it to the exact same frame you were working with, because it tends to go a little bit haywire. But we'll get there, we'll get there. Alright, there we go. All fine and dandy. Alright, flare head. Right now it's on this side, which means, because we copied the same settings, it's a bit off as far as timing goes, but keyframe the position and color the position here, keyframe it again, and set the position to around the nose. Okay. And do the exact same thing as you've been doing all along. Just move it around, move it, move it, move it. You could have some fun while doing it. I don't think of, again, Yoda in the Phantom Menace, CG and all. Or you could think of blinking Ewok eyes, because it seems to be the tip on everyone's tongue these days if you're into Star Wars. If you're not into Star Wars, you could, I don't know, check out some other science fiction films. Right around now, you should be doing some science fiction stuff anyway, because we're doing a science fiction effect from a science fiction TV show. Of course, it's in Britain, so you could check out Spaced, which is a fun show with Simon Pegg. But alright, I'm getting off topic here. I'm sorry. Okay, should be right around the point where it needs to fade out. So, okay. Right around there. So, okay. Right now we have 3 flares. And of course, a left flare that doesn't even show up because flare's been acting up on me anyway. And of course, since I've been moving the head around. Okay. Hopefully you didn't make that mistake. Whoa, I seem so professional. Okay, so let's rename the flare head to flare left. I'm sorry, this really doesn't happen to me, but okay. Flare head. There we go. Shutting it off and then moving this tamped flare again. Alright. Yeah. Such fun. Alright. I'm going to move in timings of 5 an hour now because we don't have time for this. Alright. Alright. Guess what I'm thinking about? Yeah, you got me. It's Yoda. Also, there's this Christopher Lee dude. I mean, Saruman and Phantom Menace. How cool is that, right? Yeah, you got me. I'm not even paying attention anymore. Okay. Okay, now everything should be set up as it should be. Alright, except from this little hiccup right here. Okay. Alright, we have flares and flares on the head. Alright, so the flare head. Whew, okay, set the flicker to sharp. And the brightness should be a bit bigger. So, oh no, set it to, go to the keyframe and set it to about 60 instead of 50. Less keyframe and about 60 there too. So you have something that's a bit brighter. And of course you want to make sure that it doesn't move to the extreme levels, but okay. And it should be a flicker of about 66 and 30, so it doesn't flicker as much as the other one. I set the random seed to 1111 because there's 11 doctors, and for some strange reason I actually hit 1111. Alright. Now take all of these 3 and go to Layer, Pre-Compose. I know you can't see it, but it's right underneath Camera and Auto Trace. Pre-Compose. Rename it to Flares and move all the attributes and do not open it. Alright, set the blend mode to Add. And there it is, just as it was. Okay, here comes the fun part. We're going to go into our footage 1 comp here, and we're going to duplicate it so we have a footage 2 comp. Now, press enter and rename it to particles right. Open it up and remove the flares. Alright, so we have a clean plate of just this. We could always just, do it the other way around, but I just prefer to do it this way. Right around here is where the particles should start. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the right hand. I'm going to press Ctrl Y to bring up a new layer. We're just going to get particles right. Alright. Set it to Add, because Add is the Sith, because I don't want to say that other word, the same exact letters. But, okay. As you might have guessed, effect, not layer, and trap code and particular. Hey, we have particles. Alright. The emitter. Okay. First, we want to set the position XY to the arm or the hand, and we're going to keyframe this position to match up with the hand all the way. Again, moving in the lines of 3, or the frames of 3, or 4. It doesn't really matter at this point how they look, because we're just going to track the arm. I suppose you could use a tracking program and make it follow the arm or something otherwise weird like that. But okay, same thing as with the optical flares. You could possibly even take the keyframes for the optical flares and link it to this, but come on. Let's have some fun, shall we? Alright, and right about here is where it should stop. So, okay. Yeah, looks decent enough. It's following the arm pretty nicely. And okay. Now, particles per second. This should be set to first frame, before the first frame, 0. Now, keyframe forward, and right now it should be set to about 1250. It should also be set to a sphere instead of a point, so we have more control. And this inner size should be set to about 100 in X, 100 in Y, and about 50 in Z, because we're not using Z space right now anyway. Okay, right now it looks pretty boring, but fear not, fear not. Okay. And let's see, press U second time, and right on the last frame here there should be a lot more particles, so hit these hit the add keyframe on the particles per second and go to the last one and set it up to 5,000, and after that it should be 0. So we should have a burst of particles in the end here. Okay, first frame. The direction spread should be set to a very slow. So to achieve that, we are going to have to set the direction to directional. Direction spread to about 1. And the rotation. Rotation is very important because right now it's just gushing out there. And we're going to set it to about, say, minus 45. So something around here. And rotation around there. Okay, that was a bit much. So minus 45 something, just to match up with the hand. So the velocity should be a lot. In general, it should be set to 2,000, right? So it's a lot faster. It's gushing out particles, but right now it looks okay. Now, for the end here, where the particles should reach 5,000, we're going to set a keyframe of the velocity on the 1250 mark to right around here. And when it hits 5,000, the velocity should go to 4,000. So we're spraying it out. And also, the direction spread should be set from 1 to about 20. So at the last frame, just gushes them out. You can even go as far as setting it to 30. All right, with me so far? Okay. Good for you. Now the seed, 97,510 something. Okay. The velocity random should be set to about 20%. It's not that much of a difference. And the velocity of motion, 20%. All right. The emitter is pretty much done. Now the particles. Particles are spheres. Feather is down to 0. Life is about 1 second. Life random doesn't matter. The size is about 7.5, so they're rather large actually. We're working on HD footage here, so there's that. And size random about 100% because we want difference. Now opacity is about 100%, and the opacity randomness is 100%. Transfer mode, just set it to normal. Now, moving the particles here for a while. Now, go to physics. We're going to go down here to something called a turbulence field. First off, the air resistance should be set to about 1.6. And the turbulence field affects position about 400. I'm going to set 404. We're going to fade it in with about 0.1 second instead of 0.5 seconds, so it happens a lot faster. And yeah, again, sorry for this. The scale should be set about 7, complexity about 3. Multipliers here, just set them as they are, and the evolution speed of about 320. Right? It already looks a bit like it should. So let's move into the next part here, which is the auxiliary system. So to continuously emit probability continuously, and 100 particles per second, 5 life, about 0.1. Same as main. Type, which will be cloudlight. The velocity should be set to 0, size 5, size over life should be something like that. Also the opacity should be set to about 1, and the opacity over life should be set to something similar to the size over life. The color for main should be about 85%, so we're getting slight variances, but not completely white as the particles are here. So, going back to the particles, and set the opacity over life to this one right here, and the size over life to this one right here. Okay. Now the final step in making the particles look like they should is the rendering. The rendering here, just set the motion blur to on. We set the shutter to 360, the phase to 0, and we go to type to subframe sample, set it to about 75 levels, and add an opacity boost. Alright. Put it beneath our blend footage here. Also, right click your blend footage and set to guide layer so that it won't show up in this composition. So, press Ctrl Y to bring up a new layer, black solid, put it beneath the particles. Press Ctrl Alt Y to bring up an adjustment layer actually, and give it a fast blur. Set the blend footage to add so that we can see what we're doing here. Bring the adjustment layer just above the particles and set the blur to 100 and repeat edge pixels and set the opacity here to about 55%. Now duplicate this layer, set the blend mode to screen, and set the blur to about 320. So right now we're having something that looks a bit like this. Okay. We forgot one very important thing on the particles, which is the auxiliary system gravity. Should be set to -50. Terribly sorry, I forget these things. It happens. Alright. Now duplicate the adjustment layer again, or just press Ctrl Alt Y to bring up a new one. Put it beneath the blend footage here, set it to normal, and go to color correction and add a color balance. Now, alright, set the colors to 0, 0, 0, and put the midtone red to about 100, midtone green to about 50, the highlight red to about 100, and the highlight green to about 50. Alright, it looks like shh. It looks like shh. Okay. See, these rings around here is because we're working at 8 bits per channel, but holding down the Alt button and clicking this to 16 will get rid of the rings. So, preserve the luminosity here to make sure it doesn't blow completely out, and there you have it. That is the effect on the particles. Okay. Close this composition, and, of course, bring it up here under the flares, set it to add, and now we have flares and particles on the one hand. Okay, with me so far? Alright, great. Now, we're going to add another set of particles. So, duplicate the particles right. Name it particles not right, or left, if you will. And go into the composition. Now, what we're going to do is solo the particles and the footage. I'm going to set the motion blur to off so that it renders a lot faster. Hit U to bring up the keyframes, and we are going to move it. So, remove the stopwatch for the position XY, and click it again. So, move to the other one, and again moving at the same speed as we have been before. Just move it around while you think of something nice, you know. For instance, a photo of your girlfriend. If you don't have a girlfriend, photo of your boyfriend. If you don't have a boyfriend, photo of your wife. You know, you get the idea. Everything that you can do to make this task less mundane and tedious. Because it takes time and it's pretty boring. Unless you're really into this sort of thing, in which case you should maybe see a psychiatrist or something to that matter, but okay. It's pretty fun stuff, okay. That seems legit. Now, okay. This is a problem I'm having, is the rotation here, because sometimes it just really doesn't want to play along with you. But okay, in this case, set it to minus 230 on both, and it will look a little something like that. Okay. We're getting it? Okay, we're getting it. So, back, set the motion blur to on, unsolo this layer, and unsolo the blend footage. And there you have it already. Just by doing that, you have the other set of particles. Okay, going back to the footage, close the particles left, and back into the footage, and insert the particles left, above or under the right one, it doesn't really matter, and set it to add. Okay, see what we're doing here? We're doing what we should be doing. And this thing I said about the arms disappearing when you're doing the blend, I'll show you right here why it's not that important to keep your mat perfect at all times. Okay, so right here, if you look at the arm here, you can see there's an obvious error here. But it's not a problem, because when you add something that's called flares, this is supposedly disappearing. And you add the particles as well, and you know, you won't even see that the hand is there. Okay. Anyway, let's duplicate the particles right again and rename it particles not right or left, but head. Right. Now the head is pretty much the same thing. So again, going down to the particles here and bring up the keyframes. And again, remove the position XY and move your particles to the head. And okay, solo this layer and solo this layer. You know, if you have a fast computer, you could just have the motion blur in there. If you don't have a fast computer, just shut the motion blur off. It will go a lot faster to move through. And you know, it should just be around here someplace. You know, just have some fun. Think again of something completely out of context, or you know, don't watch this tutorial, just listen to music. That's what I always do. Listen to something completely stupid like a podcast, or watch a film you've watched 100 times, something that doesn't take your attention from what you're doing, but is something else than silence and the nothingness, the black void that is working with visual effects. Okay, getting there. We are getting there. Alright. If you manage to click out of it, that's fun. Alright, moving down here. And okay. So, I'm gonna go ahead and shut off the motion blur, because it does take time. Okay, and now we are checking out our particles that are gushing down at 45-degree angle. It looks stupid, and we don't want that to be happening. So, set it to 0 and 0, and just play with it until it's ripe, as some would say. I don't think I would ever say that, but, you know, set it to about 90 degrees. So they're shooting about right up, 90 degrees on the X rotation. Alright, it should be shooting right up, and this is where the motion blur and everything comes into place, but we should possibly set it a bit lower than we have been, or rather than I have been. So down to somewhere close to the chin, but not exactly on the chin. I mean the throat, right? Someplace around there seems nice. Of course, keep doing this. Takes a while. I won't be cutting it for the tutorial because you should see how long this takes to do. But okay, we're doing it and we're having fun, and we're thinking about politics and other extremely fun things to do while we're doing this. I realize it's not even half fun, but you get the idea. Okay. Let's get this over with. We're just about done. Let's zoom in on these keyframes. Let's see. This one is the one that started screwing it up. I was about to drop the F-bomb there. Don't want to do that. Okay. So, as you can see here, it looks okay, but the direction spread is pretty much blown out of proportion. So remove that and let's have the direction spread be at about 30% all the way. 30 or even 45. You know, just this is the thing you'll have to see for yourself. 45 could be a lot. You could argue with me on that, but in this case, I'm just going to put it to 45. It doesn't really matter, just way above 1. And okay, let's keep it at 45 here. And when it hits the 5,000 mark, just put it to about 90, so it just bursts out there. Bursts everywhere, and looks cool. All right. Now, unsoloing this, going back to shut on the motion blur or turn on the motion blur. All right, we're looking decent and cool. All right, again, project here, particles head, back down here, set it to add, and all right, we are starting to look like something. Okay, so word of advice: this thing is CPU intensive. I recommend putting your resolution down to about half around now, right around now, or even a quarter. If you're working at 25%, which I am because I'm recording a tutorial at about 1280 by 720, that's what you want to do. Okay, now we're going to do the optional part here, which is adding the torches I mentioned earlier. The torches are taken directly from the Action Essentials 2-pack, and we'll be serving today as some fun stuff. Just a little extra flair. So, okay, we're looking at here. We're at 1511 mark, or the 1 second 11 mark. So, same frame here, and let's go ahead and add our torch. Whoa, what are you doing, right? Looks like crap. It's completely ugly and everything. Don't worry about it. Hit us, bring down the scale to about 50 or 45%. I'm going to set it to 45 and drag it down to start on this frame now. Move to the arm here, press P and keyframe the position. Solo the layer and the blend footage and move it along with the hand. Just like you've been doing with everything else. This long and boring process of matching footage to the hand. Right? It's boring, it takes time, and it looks good because of it. Think of other VFX artists, like say people that are doing rotoscope on a daily basis. Imagine their pain. You know, you think this takes time? Try doing rotoscoping for a living. Alright, just it doesn't have to be perfect because it just kind of sit in the background anyway. Okay, right about here is where it should be disappearing. So hit the T button, bring the opacity on the next frame down to 0, and that is about it. So set the mode to add, unsolo the layers, and put it beneath the flares. Right? Just adds a little bit of extra flair, and that really helps sell the effect. So again, let's make sure it lines up perfectly and that it's not starting before all the other effects, because we definitely don't want that. Alright, so right around here. Okay, now another nice thing to do is press F4 to bring up the features, set motion blur on it and motion blur there, just to add that little extra flair when you're moving your footage. Okay, turbulent torch number 2. Let's solo it, the blend footage, adding the second torch in here, scale it down like you did again to about 50 to 40%. 45 seems to do the trick in my case, and let's make it start right around here. Okay, now P position, keyframe it 3 frames per second, or rather 3 frames per time, I suppose. Make sure that it lines up when you're doing it, because if not, it'll look completely bonkers and stupid and all that jazz. Now, remember that thing that takes time? This is one of them. But it's just fire, and it's just an extra subtle way of doing things, so just add some flair to the effect that's already there, and keeps hiding potential flaws in the blend. Alright, again with the T for opacity, click the stopwatch and set it to 0, just so that's there and not there. Now, motion blur, and everything's fine. Press F4 to bring up the modes here, set it to add, bring it beneath the flares, and of course Torch Turbulent 03 goes back into the mix here, and this one is going to be set to the head. Okay, so the size of this varies a bit from the hands, about 60%, because your head is usually a bit bigger than your hands, I suppose. Alright, so again, press P, bring up the position, keyframe it, and use your life's worth of doing this mundane task. It's really boring, isn't it? I know. These things are boring, and there is no make look good button. I wish it was. I think everyone does. Now, this particular case, a torch is somewhat perfect, because when you're scrolling past this and moving it along with your head, you realize that a torch is round, or roughly round, the shape of your head. So this could actually be looking really cool or freak you out at the same time. When set to a proper blend mode of add, could actually look as if your head is on fire. So be careful when doing this, it might actually hurt. I know, I'm completely nuts. You have to just bear with me. Been going strong for about 50 minutes now. Okay. Right around here, we should be disappearing. Should be disappearing on this frame, actually. So, T opacity and 0. Okay. Doing the same thing again as we've been doing all along. Set it to add, moving it under the flares and unsoloing. Right. We're going to be looking at our footage pretty soon. So, okay, that's the gist of it. We are going to hit the 0 key and doing a RAM preview. Again, set the preview quality from resolution from full to a quarter or half if you want to do RAM previews. It takes a lot of time. My system is, at this current date, a bit fast, so it will do this effect a bit faster. But okay, we're looking at this, and I can see some errors that has been done by me, namely down here. Don't know if you can see it, but I've moved some layers up where they shouldn't be. It doesn't matter. Okay, so that looks about right. And again, setting this to quarter will match the RAM preview, and we can go ahead and find out which layer it is that is moved. Now, easiest way of doing this, just zoom in and click to find the layer that is okay. It seems to be the flares, so just move the flares down, and there we go. Everything is fine. Dandy. All right. Okay. For some reason they're acting up, but okay. So the last thing we're going to do is master this in 720p. So I'm going to take all our footage here. I'm going to layer, pre-compose, and we're going to call it completed visual effects, or VFX. Move all attributes and then just hit OK. We are staying in the same footage, staying in the same composition. Go to composition settings and set the width to 1280. The height will be 1000. Sorry, not 1000. It's set to 720. Okay. Hit the S key and scale it down to about 78%. All right. Now we're starting to look like stupid fools here, but this is where the fun begins. Press P and R. P and Shift. Okay, just press P and Alt click. Alt click the position. So we're gonna add some camera movement to this scene. Sorry for being so quiet. We're gonna add a expression here. So just press wiggle and about 3 and 7. 3 and 7. So we're moving the footage around slightly, ever so slightly, but this helps sell a shot that is otherwise static, right? So we're basically faking handheld motion, but handheld motion is not only positioning, it's also rotation. So pressing the R key here, doing the same thing on rotation, but making it a bit less prominent. So wiggle and about 2 and 4 should do the trick, because okay, we're doing it, that's a lot. So divide this into slash, divide it by 2 and set it down to about 3. Okay, still moving quite a bit, but okay, set it to 2 again, and okay, just find something that will do it for you. I'm sure there's tutorials mainly by me out there on this exact thing, but okay. Now we can look at the effect again. Okay. Let's see. RAM preview this. Let's go back. Setting it to half minimal, and okay. So RAM preview this. Okay, and that is it. We have successfully regenerated ourselves. One final thing though, before we hit the hour mark, is the actual blend, the actual morph, where we have footage that is slightly out of place. You could, as I did in the final example, trim it down and make sure that it blends a bit better by using curves and levels to make sure that it doesn't suddenly brightly pop out there. But yes, this is the finished effect that we have created for AEtutsPlus.com. My name is still Tom Ellingson, and I'm happy to have had you on board for this effect. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.